Here we go. Yes, that's true. I am the co-director of Scientific Vision, flashy title, for AI Innovation of Sweden. I also spend part of my time at RISE, Swedish Research Institutes, heading the AI research there. I am one of these guys that have been working with AI and machine learning way before it was cool. I started working with it at the time when you went to companies and so on and said, can we try AI solutions? They said, we tried that in the 80s, it didn't work. Now things have changed quite drastically. I mean, with these latest developments during, I would say, for me, the biggest change is in the last 5 or 6 years or something like that. The level of interest is at a completely different level. And so is the sense of urgency, both at the company level, but also at universities, in academia, and from the government. So AI Innovation of Sweden is a government initiative, started, well, it's not even a year ago, it's 9 months old or something like that, 8 or 9 months. I've only been there since 1st of September, so you have to excuse me if I don't know all of the backstory, basically. And it's supposed to basically strengthen the Swedish AI ecosystem. So not only research, not only applications, not only government or public sector, strengthening the whole ecosystem. So let's take a look at basically what AI Innovation of Sweden is today. So since it was established in the beginning of the year, we now have more than 50 partners, active partners, participating with both data, manpower, resources such as compute, and also financing. We have started organizing everything, setting up a team that works with all the practical issues and things like that, and lately, during summer and so on, started working on collaborative projects with AI Innovation of Sweden, connecting with industry, small companies, big companies, public sector, and and also universities and research institutes. So far, 5 of these projects have started. Around 7, this is, this changes daily almost, is in pre-studies or waiting for funding. And this is something that I've seen this process many times before. This is going to increase really rapidly now that we have all the basics in place, basically. So we are also talking about a data factory. I will get back to what that is a little bit later. But its basic principle is that we share data and knowledge somewhere. Already, we have 5 donated data sets in this data factory. They're pretty large, they're pretty high value. They come from the industry, for example, building huge data sets, terabytes on terabytes for looking at autonomous vehicles. And it comes from, for example, research within cancer and things like that. So pretty good data sets that could attract both new research, new method development, bring people to Sweden, and so on. During the beginning of the year, we also brought the Finnish course, Elements of AI, to Sweden. And so far, this is probably a larger number right now, 19,000 people have taken that course, which is pretty good, actually. It's not bad. Is the course perfect? Of course it's not, but it's a really good start for people to learn the basics of AI. And that is something that we really, really see is necessary, basically. We're talking about regional nodes. We should have offices and presence in many parts of Sweden. 1 is firmly established, 4 are under development. And we do run quite a lot of events. So far, 11 events with, almost 2,000 people attending in total. So let's go back to the basics, basically. So why do we need to strengthen the Swedish ecosystem? Well, the first basic principle is, of course, that Sweden is a relatively small country. We're smaller than New York, basically. So we need to make sure that all of Sweden works together to build real critical mass within this area. This is not something that has been obvious that we've had before. If you're looking at, for example, research, where I come more from, it's been relatively fractured. Research groups on different places, on universities all over Sweden, but not necessarily collaborating that much with each other. This is changing now, and there is a completely different sense of urgency to actually work together. But this is basically where we've been for a very, very long time. Late start for AI. That is, yeah, in general true. Sweden had a late start in AI. Not necessarily that we haven't done AI. I have many colleagues and friends that have been working within this area for 30, 40 years almost. But we haven't had really the mass. So why is that? Well, basically, in my personal view, Sweden sort of took a direction quite a long time ago, probably driven by industry and so on, that had a really big push towards automation, that control theory was a really important thing. And this is still something that we see at universities and so on in Sweden. Control theory has been dominating for quite some time. And control theory sort of split from AI in the 50s, 60s, somewhere basically, to go ahead and do its own thing and build its own methods and so on. So the more pure AI people, well, they haven't been that strong in Sweden. But that also means that we have a huge resource of people in Sweden that might actually contribute to the area, given the chance, basically. So basically, the conclusion is that, of course, collaboration is key. We need to work together across industries, across universities, and so on and so on. So I've already talked a little bit about this. This is from a Vinnova report that came out last year, basically. So how do we build on our strengths in Sweden? Well, we're really very good at digitalisation in society. At least that's what everyone says. Sometimes when you do get out to companies and public sector and so on, you feel like this cannot possibly be true, but perhaps it's actually worse in other countries. So we should have a good position to build on. That's really good. If we have the basic infrastructure in place, we can get data and so on, we can push these systems into use. The competence base, I really think, is sort of there. We don't have that many AI experts yet, but they're coming with huge educational programs and things like that. But there's also lots and lots of people that have skills in really areas that are very, very close to what modern AI is and can easily move in that direction, again, given the opportunity. If you look at the red parts, AI-related research and so on, yes, but it's true. I would have liked to see more, especially in the past. But now we have huge programs, a lot of financing going into AI-related research. What I'm not seeing yet, perhaps, is that we have, as a country, sort of gotten our own research priorities in place. So this is still something that we need to do, and this is something that AI innovation aims to be part of, basically. To have this dialogue between society and the researchers and being able to translate between the two so that we can set up a good research, help setting up a good research agenda for Sweden. So right now, again, massive interest, real strong sense of urgency. We just need to build on this momentum now, and sometimes when I talk, I usually don't give this kind of presentations, I give way more technical presentations, but I typically say that when I speak about AI, a lot of what I need to do is moderating the hype, because we can do tons of things, we should spend lots of time doing it and invest in it, but sometimes the expectations of what it can do and how fast we can get there are a little bit on the high side, basically. So with let's say, moderated expectations, this is going to be great. It just might take a little bit longer than we sometimes think when we come from the outside. We have a lot of basic efforts starting now. So not only AI innovation of Sweden, we have AI competence for Sweden, which helps build competence for people that have been working in other areas, built on 7 universities around Sweden. RISE AI, which I also head, is the AI department of the Swedish Research Institute, and the biggest is, of course, WASP, the Wallenberg Autonomous Systems and AI effort. That's 4 or something billion crowns into AI research during 10 years, which is a massive effort. This is the biggest research effort I've ever seen in Sweden, definitely within AI. So Education of PhD students and things like that, I think we're sort of starting to have that covered. So what is the vision for AI innovation of Sweden then? Well, if we basically read from this, we want Sweden to be a leading nation in the application of AI solutions all over society, basically. We want to be internationally recognized for this and have a perspective that we take ethical and security issues seriously. What does that mean? What can we do as AI Innovation of Sweden to help this happen? Well, basically, we're going to try to accelerate this process basically through horizontal resources. We're talking about knowledge and knowledge sharing. We're talking about this data factory where we can share data and methods and so on. And we're talking about these collaboration platforms. So let's have a look a little bit closer about what we basically think these things are. So knowledge. We need some kind of thought leadership for Sweden, basically. People that actually have an active interest to look at the Swedish ecosystem, trying to decide which are the most important things to look at, what are we good at, how can we drive basic research from the applications that Sweden needs, and so on. So we're setting up groups of people that look at that. We make sure that there is an active AI network in Sweden. And we make sure that there is education, not on a university level, not on the basic level and so on, but perhaps more towards people that are already out and working and so on. And of course, knowledge means a lot more than just methodological knowledge about AI. It means a lot of best practices. How do you actually build these things in practice? And how do you change organizations to do that? So these are the things that we want to have a look at, basically. We have a data factory. Right now, a basic infrastructure with quite a few data sets and so on, and decent amount of computational power that we can gather data sets to, that researchers or people from companies can come work on to develop new methods or to test their ideas and things like that. Here we see that we can have a look at lots and lots of different models for how to share data, how to share knowledge, and so on. And part of that data factory is, of course, this setup. How do we share data, models, knowledge? And of course, collaboration. AI Innovation of Sweden is running a lot of project management and a number of regional co-locations. I'll get to that right now. So again, AI Innovation of Sweden is basically a set of national resources, and that's the part I'm working with. The data factory, help with project management. We have ethics and legal expertise to make sure that we can build this stuff in Sweden. We make sure that we connect to internationally leading research and innovation environments so that we can serve as a hub for that. We have talks with London and Canada and France and Germany now to set this up formally. We take care of thought leadership. We have a set of founding fellows, which are really, really strong academics and industry people internationally that can help guide us and Sweden in the way forward. We make sure that there are educational programs and so on, and the basic cornerstones are the data. It's the data factory connected to collaborative projects. Then we have the regional nodes. There is already one up and running in Gothenburg, where there is a space where people who participate in AI Innovation in Sweden can put people to sit, work, meet by the coffee machine and actually discuss these kind of AI problems and so on, and solutions to them. And a lot of activities connected to it. Seminars, conferences, hackathons, these kinds of things, basically. Right now, we're setting up one in Stockholm. We're setting one up in Skåne, one in the northern part of Sweden. That's a bit more of a distributed node. The one in Gothenburg is just one place. I think the one in the northern part of Sweden is going to span more like 1,000 by 1,000 kilometers or something like that, because northern part of Sweden is big, right? So it's going to have to be a little bit different. And we're looking at more places at the moment. This is the national team at the moment, some project leaders, communication, and so on, but we're recruiting data scientists and experts and so on to be part of the more technical direction now. I would like to point out Martin Svensson, my co-director for operations and so on, and feel free to contact myself or him if you're interested in how this works or if you would like to work with us, basically. These are the people that are now running the regional nodes. So Helena is head of the Gothenburg node, and Anders, Malin, and Agneta are looking at the northern Lund and Stockholm nodes and bringing in partners and setting them up, basically, to set up spaces and everything here around. So, again, if we go back to education and things like that, elements of AI. I think this has been a huge success in Sweden, actually. 19,000, it's a very good number, and it's growing. Now, of course, the momentum has sort of dropped off a little bit, but I would still urge you, if you have people in your organization and so on that would benefit from learning a bit more on AI, take the course. Again, no course is perfect, but this is pretty good, actually. It at least gives you a basic feeling for what AI is. 150 Swedish companies have accepted the challenge that they should be part of this elements of AI. And the experience is basically that one of the main benefits, at least the one that I see, is that when we start talking about AI like this, when people start learning a little bit about AI, they're definitely, let's say, less afraid. Because if you talk to people, even at high levels in companies, they often see more AI as a threat than as an opportunity. But once you start explaining what it is, and that there is no magic in it at all, it's just a pile of math at the end of the day, they feel more secure about it. So, why a data factory? Well, first of all, if you're going to work with modern AI, you're going to need computational resources, right? We can share those for collaborative projects, for helping researchers to do cool things on interesting data. Right now, we're running basically a setup with storage and compute, which is based on the NVIDIA TGX platform. We need data. We have collected 5 very big data sets so far, and work has begun on them. We would like to prioritize really interesting data sets, of course, not just, the bath water temperatures in lakes around Sweden or something like that, but actually something that might make a difference when it comes to. So I think the medical data that we have now is a good example. Actually learning how to predict and classify forms of cancer and things like that is way more important and pushes methods way further, basically. So in the data factory, see it as partly a physical infrastructure. A physical infrastructure that I think we should build step by step as we need it. And as we need it is, of course, a bit of a vague definition, because in my experience, especially if you have, for example, PhD students like I do, working with GANs, generative adversarial networks, they can use as much compute as you give them, basically. If you give them a 2 million crown machine with lots of graphics cards, they will use it. If you give them a 10 million machine, they will use it, which is fine. But sometimes you have to limit things, basically, to what is actually practical. But in the data factory, we want to put this data. We want to put methods and algorithms that we develop together, but also all these other things around it, best practices, legal frameworks. How do you actually write contracts when you're sharing data? What are the models for sharing data and so on? Because not everything can be in the open. Sometimes we actually need to write these things. And I think basically we are building something that we're aiming to be a world-leading AI experience. A place where it's very easy to share data, a place where it's very easy to get to work with very, very good infrastructure, where it's easy to get started, and that offers not only these kinds of things like, just storage and access to data sets, but also methods, software, systems, so on for example, data generation, if we need synthetic data. Data curation. which is one of the biggest things we actually do in practice when we build real systems, right? And data annotation. Although I really hope in the future that we are going to have to rely less and less on annotation, because this is limiting us right now. So what about our partners? Well, and this is not an updated picture either. Partners are brought in basically mostly by regional node when we build it. So this comes a lot from when the Gothenburg node was built. And then it's expanding with partners that are fundamentally based in Stockholm, in Lund, and so on, and so on, and so on. But we have a lot of very, very large companies. Ericsson, Volvo, Astra, ABB should be on there, and so on, and so on. We have, and most universities in Gothenburg, we will have all academia in Stockholm, in Lund, and so on, while we're building this. And small companies, consulting companies, and so on. And we try to offer some kind of model for all of them. So what do we actually do? Let's take a few examples of some projects that we're actually running. This is only here because I think it's sort of fun, and it's something that I would have liked to do for a very, very long time. Using AI, cameras, perhaps satellite imagery, whatever, to actually look at biomass and how it develops. Because you can do so much with modern techniques, basically, in this space. And this is a very particular thing. It's tracking guillemots, birds. How many there are, how many individuals, how many eggs they lay, and so on, just by having camera surveillance, and how to build methods for that. We have a National Space Data Lab, which is a bit of a misnomer because it's not really space data we're looking at. We're looking at data about Earth, and you can possibly do what I mentioned earlier. But there we have large data sets covering Sweden from satellites and so on. And typically I talk a little bit more technically. I'm going to skip that right now. Sorry, this is my favorite part, but let's take that another day. And move on to the Swedish Language Data Lab. This is also connected to other projects with, for example, building language models for Swedish public sector and so on. And this is something that is obvious that we need to do in Sweden. No one's really going to take care of the Swedish language for us. And so many AI applications today are built on, let's say, some NLP people would be really angry with me if I said unstructured data like language, because they think there's tons of structure in language. But so much of the data that we're looking at in practical applications is text. So building Swedish, for example, Swedish state-of-the-art language models that we can build applications upon. This is something that we do within these projects and that we aim to have in the data factory. Albert for Swedish, for different types of data and so on, that you can build your own models on top of. And of course, this is going to expand, I see, to different areas, like for medical text data and so on, and so on, and so on. So finally then, if we're looking at this all together, so how can you help strengthen the Swedish ecosystem? Well, if we're talking about the different axes, basically, we can talk about partnerships, working with us directly, education, data sharing, data access, be parts of reference groups, and be parts of projects. Then, of course, everyone can be parts of projects. Everyone can be a partner in this, and please contact us if you would like to be a partner in this. Of course, there is a different model for large corporations like Ericsson and so on, and startups, where, for example, corporations like Ericsson would have to put in resources to be part of this project, basically. But a startup, of course, we don't expect you to put in any funding or anything like that. You can contribute in other ways. Academia contributes in other ways. Public sector contributes in other ways. But most of all, different actors in Sweden definitely can be part of this. As an individual, it's a bit more tricky, but if you have a company, if you're from the public sector or something, we're very interested to hear from you, basically. And with that, I think I will close this presentation, and thank you for your attention.